Blog Talk Radio.
You are listening to the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Welcome to Earth Sky People Radio. Living in harmony with Mother Earth and awakening to an intergalactic society. With your host, Victoria Vives, founder of Reiki Wellbeing and co-founder of the Earth Sky People Movement. Any opinions expressed on Earth Sky People Radio do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any opinions expressed by Earth Sky People Radio's guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Earth Sky People Radio. Hello, this is Earth Sky People Radio with your host and friend, Victoria Vives Khuong. You can find me at victoriavives.com. Today is Saturday, December 6, 2014, and whether you are listening to this show live or in the archives, we are still all in the now. So we are all in the present moment, sharing energetic space. And even if you are not in the same room that I am, you can still hear me because we are in the same frequency. We have that energetic connection that brought us together today. So if you are not driving, I invite you to close your eyes for a moment and become more and more aware of that energetic connection that keeps us together. And if you focus on your heart, just right in the center of your heart chakra, imagine that you can breathe through it. And you may be able to feel that magnetic force between us and between you and each person in this circle. Tuning in with us in the now. Also, let's become aware of our own presence and where we are right now. Let's take a moment to honor the place where we are in and the spirits of the land, sending love to Mother Earth. And together, we declare our circle sacred space. And take a deep cleansing breath. And slowly you can open your eyes. We are together in Earth Sky People Radio. Earth representing our connection with Mother Earth and nature, and Sky representing spirituality and life beyond the Earth, extraterrestrial life, extra-dimensional, and I feel great appreciation for each of you that are now tuning in. So today we have a special guest, and his name is James Weeks. He's the visionary of the upcoming feature-length documentary Across the King's River, sharing his journey of wisdom and healing in African spiritual traditions. We will have also a Q&A section, so make sure to start calling at 347-308-8788 and press number 1 to make sure that we get to your question. And last week we had the completion of the Starseed training, How to Fall in Love with Your Life on Earth, with yours truly, Victoria Vives Khuong. And I was sharing tons of powerful, life-changing tools to bring greater levels of happiness and love to your life. You can listen to that replay and any other replays at victoriavives.com/radio. But we are going to focus on today's show now. We have here James, and this is very special for me because he's actually initiated in the Ifa tradition, which is part of the Yoruba tradition, and my father is Yoruba. I don't have connection with my father, so I really explore all that I can some way with my roots. So I'm delighted, I'm excited to present to you James Wick. Hi, James. How are you?
I'm good, Victoria. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I had this feeling that we have spoken before, even though this is our first conversation. I had this feeling that we've had a conversation at some time, but yet this is the first time. So on some level, our spirits have definitely connected,
Oh, how beautiful. It is true, and I can feel that. Thank you so much. And once again, this is very special. It is an honor to have you here. I have my own mentors in shamanism, and part of them is this Zulu tradition. So I have that connection, but, connecting with that lineage or that tradition from my dad is very special. So I'm excited to learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and something that is really outstanding is how you have been able to get into this mission, this quest of following your vision about your film across the Kings River. Could you share with us how you got into this?
That idea came to me many years ago. I would say around maybe 2005, maybe 2006. Actually, it was Anyway, I was working on another project. I'm a photographer also, so I was working on a calendar series that we called, at that time it was called The Sacred Journey. And while I was working on that, while I was promoting that, someone suggested, well, you should do a film. Why don't you do a film? And so I thought, well, that was a good idea. And so that led me to start to explore the idea of doing a film. At that time, I didn't know that it would take so long, that the film process is often a very long one, But I believe that every vision that we have, they're all connected in some way. So, for example, the previous project that I was working on, the photography, that calendar, was connected to the film, and the film is going to be connected to something else. So what I like to tell people is that once you become aware of a vision or an inspiration that comes to you, if you stay with it, it will lead you to something else. But you have to stay with it to see where it will lead you. But it's trying to lead you to something else. It's trying to lead you to a place where you could discover more about yourself. And I believe that it's trying to take you to a place where not only can you discover more about yourself, but where you can discover how you could be more useful to other people in the world, how you could live a more fulfilling life, how you can help empower people in some way or help to heal someone in some way. And so the visions that come to you, Victoria, the visions that come to all those who are listening, they're important, and we should honor them, and we should try to follow them, even though they try to follow them.
Beautiful. And that sounds like really ancient wisdom because, we may hear the same message today in different words, but, everything is coming down to the same seed, to the same ancient knowledge, and that's what I think I feel from that African spirituality. And I would like to hear from you, what is so unique about African spirituality from your perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I would say that one, it's the mother. Africa is the mother. Africa is maybe the ancient soul. Africa is the place where humanity began. All of us began there. And so because Africa is the mother or the father or both, Africa has a lot to teach us. And so there are people that say that there are things that maybe that our elders know that maybe no one else on the planet knows. There are things that they have knowledge of that maybe other people don't. Why we've been here so long. There's no way you could be on Earth for so long and not have acquired some wisdom along the way or not have acquired some deep knowledge along the way. So our elders do, our traditions have a lot to teach us. about and to heal us too in different ways, and so connecting to this African source, or at least to start by respecting it, is a good place for all of us to begin.
Beautiful. And would you say that perhaps in Africa, this is one of the reasons why they have kept so much the tradition and not go so much into a civilization, meaning that perhaps it's not that they are not advanced, but that they want to keep the roots of their traditions? What do you feel is the difference between living in that space of being connected with nature and being fully aware of connecting with the people around, whereas here, perhaps in the Western world or the US or Europe, is totally different? Do you think it's related to keeping those traditions?
Well, as you said or implied, most of these traditions in Africa, they revolve around nature, the respect for nature, because nature to them was like a book that you could read too. And so, like one of my mentors always said, that in our traditions, we don't start from the viewpoint in the world that we are higher than any other part of nature. We don't see ourselves as being higher than the tree or more important than the ocean, or more important than the birds. The elders say that we should bow down to the mountain, we should bow down to the ocean. And so even in many of the sacred literature in our traditions, they might refer to the ocean as being a priest or a priestess, or they might refer to a stone as being a diviner or a healer, because we see, the spirit in all things. It's clear that, part of the disease that we're facing now, so much of the conflicts that we face in the world are caused by our disconnection from nature, our lack of respect from nature, the exploitation of the world and the exploitation of other people. And so I think in some ways we're all being called to find that balance, and how we find that balance may not always be clear to us, but it's part of the challenge that lies ahead of us, not just here, but in Africa too. In Africa too, because of colonialism, people have been taught to hate their own culture. They've been taught this, and so, but at the same time, it's so old and it's so strong that it's never completely died out. In times of crisis and in times of trouble, people return to these traditions to find healing or to find solutions to problems that they have.
And you are initiated in the Ifa tradition, is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
You are initiated in the Ifa tradition?
That is correct, yes.
And in order to be initiated, you had to go to Africa, I would imagine, or how was your journey?
Okay, well, no, it's just that I went to Africa, but because these traditions also, during times of slavery, so much of our people, the Yoruba people, so much of them came to the West, places like Cuba, places like Brazil, places like Trinidad in particular. There were very, very high concentrations of our people in those Caribbean regions. So a lot of these traditions survived. In some ways, they've changed. For example, in Cuba, it blended with elements of Christianity or Roman Catholicism and became what we call Santeria today. And so throughout the diaspora, initiations are done all the time in different ways, not necessarily how they're done in Africa, but the vibration of the land is different. Experiences of people here in the West are different too. And so times for a tradition to survive, it must adapt to the place that it's in. It can't always stay in its original form. It must adapt. So to answer your question, there are people who are initiated here in the United States, some are initiated in the Caribbean, and really all over the world at this stage because these traditions are growing.
Okay, beautiful. And for our listeners to understand more how the IFA tradition can help them, so for example, if you would have a client, what kind of things you can provide for them?
It all depends. Well, everyone can benefit from guidance. We all can benefit from guidance. Many clients who come for a reading, sometimes they're at a crossroads in their life, or they're not sure whether they should turn to the left or turn to the right, or it could be around a relationship problem, a relationship difficulty that they're having, and they need a type of solution for it. And so we would check with the spirit world to find out, well, what's best for this client? For example, is this relationship healthy or not? Can this relationship, at times, it might be a health-related matter or health-related concern, and there might be certain rituals that we do to help the client with a health concern. It could be a situation on the job. So it all depends. What we do in a consultation is just part of what we do. And then there's the ritual side where we use like ritual medicines. We do certain offerings or sacrifice or different things to help turn a situation around so that it's more favorable for a client so that they can hopefully move forward.
Okay, and well, we know that you can offer your services. Your website is Across the Rivers King, the King's River, sorry?
Across the King's River, acrossthekingsriver.com.
Okay. And also...
acrossthekingsriver.com.
Okay, acrossthekingsriver.com, sorry.
Correct.
So what would you say that people can look for in order to find the right person in the IFA tradition? Because I had an experience that wasn't as positive. One of the reasons why I felt it wasn't positive is because I am personally in the path of shamanism, but this person that I saw, Babalao, was telling me that women cannot do this kind of work and are secondary. So obviously that didn't feel very good to me. And then also it was like a large amount of money that he wanted to charge me, like thousands of dollars. So I don't know if this is a sign that is not so trustworthy, the person, or how would you say that we can understand how this should work, and what guidelines would you share with us?
The guidelines for me, I would always say, is just like, hopefully, just like before you get any other kind of service, whether it's you're looking for a mechanic for your car, whether it's you're looking for a carpenter for your house, whether you're going to a doctor, I would always suggest trying to get some references, maybe, if possible. Maybe find out, well, what type of experience have other people had, with this person, I would suggest starting there. I would never suggest just going to someone because they have a title or because they call themselves or they're called Babalao or whatever the title is, whether it's ENiva. And this is true across traditions. I found, unfortunately, that someone's title doesn't always have deep meaning. Why? Because there are some people who abuse things or take advantage of things, just like they do in all other traditions. So I would say maybe start with getting some references and ask yourself, just talk to the person before you decide to proceed with a service of any kind, and ask yourself, well, how does this feel to you? Does it feel right? Does it make sense to you? Always check in with yourself. Always remember that, hey, you are a spirit too, And
right.
Yeah, sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we are so busy searching for something else, sometimes outside of ourselves, that we forget that we are spirits ourselves. And so I would say, check in with yourself, check in with your heart, check in with your intuition, and ask, does this feel right to me, or does this worldview feel right? You know, everyone who might be in this line of work may not have the worldview that's right for you. So it's a question of finding out not just what is right for you, but also who is right for you. That's very important, because you are a unique person, you are a unique soul. We all are. And so it's important that we find ways, or we connect with people who could help us to be more of our own authentic selves.
Beautiful. And about the prices, is it normal to be charged thousands of dollars? How you see that?
Well, I don't know exactly what was this? What was he charging you for? Was it for? Could you tell me what was it for?
Yeah, in the beginning, the only thing I did with this person was a session like for a reading. I think that was like $30, so that was normal. But then it was like, for removing these curves and this and that, it was like thousands of dollars.
Excessive. I mean, I've never charged a client thousands of dollars to do anything, ever,
Okay.
So, I mean, I never have, and I could only speak from my own experience, and so I don't want to get into why he was saying this, because I don't know why, but I can only speak for myself and what I do, and so I don't want to speak about him so much, because I don't know him or why he was saying that.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand this, because I feel that sometimes we are not used to these traditions, so we may people may take advantage of us, or we don't understand exactly. So I appreciate that you sharing that, because now I have confirmation that it's not necessarily that it has to be that way. And the other aspect I wanted to ask you about is what is the role of a woman and a man in the Ifa tradition? Is there different aspects that they are taken care of, or is the same for both women and men?
Women, for example, in the tradition, there are women. First, I want to say that before I answer that question, what I want to say is this tradition, I believe, would not have survived if it wasn't a lot, especially in the diaspora. I think the women played a huge role in keeping these traditions alive in the diaspora, in the Western world, because I feel that the sisterhood, was more together, more cohesive, and even in our times, I find that the connection between maybe the women who practice these traditions, I have to say, from my own experience, are oftentimes stronger than the women. The women, I believe, are the ones that have kept so much of this together because of their ability to nurture, because they're givers. A good friend of mine told me recently, well, women are healers, or women were the first healers, or women are healers. And so I think there's truth in that. But getting back to your question, there has been, in Nigeria, I would say, there is sexism, but still women do practice these traditions. Their traditions, for example, women practitioners are called Ifa, which means the mother of Ifa, And so I think more and more women are rising to more maybe leadership positions, or at least women in the diaspora too, where they're reclaiming more and more of their rights and their roles. But yes, women do practice these traditions. Women do offer counseling. Women do nurture. Women do, have clients. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I want to just let know any listeners that are joining now that we are here with James Weeks, the visionary of the upcoming Future Lens documentary, Across the Kings River. His website is acrossthekingsriver.com. And if you want to call for the Q&A section, just start calling now, 347-308-8788. And make sure to press number 1 to make sure that we know that you want to ask a question. And maybe you want to ask a question or maybe you want to make a comment, just make sure to press number 1. Okay, so now getting back to your film, the documentary, you recently had this amazing crowdfunding experience in which you actually funded your film. Did you complete that?
A successful campaign. We were trying to raise, our goal was to raise 45,000, but we raised 25, which was our minimum goal.
Wow.
So that's what we, and so with that funding, we're able to move forward and do some things. The budget for a film, most films, is really higher than 25,000. Films are very, very expensive. But in a campaign that what we just did, our goal wasn't to raise all of the money that we need. Our goal was just raise some money so that we could move forward. Because, like I said, doing a film is very, very, very expensive. Doing a film of this nature, for example, the budget is over, for example, $100,000. But in a campaign, our goal is always to raise some money, not all of the money that we need.
Okay, and you say that this film is more than a film. It's a challenge. It's a way of life. Would you express or explain what this means?
Yes, well, my goal has never been just to create a film that my goal has always been to do more than entertain people or to have people watch a film and say, oh, they liked it or they did not like it, or that they feel educated or they felt entertained. The goal for me has always been that to have a film that inspires people to live again or to connect with whatever it is that they feel they should be doing with their lives. To me, that is more of the spirit of what this film is about to do, because there are so many films like that. I mean, there's so many not films like this. There's so many films where people go and watch and they're entertained. They go out, spend, let's say, $10 on a weekend. They come back, maybe they buy the film or they don't, and that film is on their shelf. But sometimes that film doesn't do that much for them. We want to do something more. We hope that this film really inspires people to live again in some way, or to take a step closer to their vision, or maybe to live on a deeper level, to give them the courage to say yes, that they can live life maybe more so on their terms than they have been, be more meaningful to me than for someone to just say they liked the film or whatever, or that they learned something, but that it changes their life in some way.
Beautiful. And I feel it's so important because, right now we are all here, we are all alive, but we are so distracted by so many things that are not truly the core of life. So getting back to what is important and understanding the depth and the sacredness of being here alive, I feel is so special, and I feel that your film can help with that. Why is this film so important right now?
Well, a number of reasons why. One of the reasons is that because, yes, it's true that these traditions are old, but it's also true that what's happening around the world is that a lot of traditions are dying in some way. What scholars are saying, for example, that many of the world's languages, they're dying too. They're dying at a rate that's maybe faster than has ever occurred in history. And as these traditions die, we start to lose knowledge. We start to, basically what's happening, like part of what's happening, we start to not just lose knowledge, important knowledge that can help heal us, but sometimes we also start to lose our identity. We lose possibilities. We lose creativity as the world, as diversity decreases. And so it's important at this time why a film like this is important, because these traditions have so much to teach us, and if we allow them to die, in some ways we die also, or we don't become all of what we are meant to do. The world has less possibilities as these if we allow these traditions to die when we could have done something to help save them.
How was for you to go to Africa? Because my experience is that I grew up in Europe, and I feel that because of Europe being an old continent with very old structure, tradition, it gave me very powerful roots. And then when I came here to the U.S. and everything felt so new and the energy was completely different, kind of being able to reinvent myself and at the same time feeling a little bit less grounded. So I can only imagine how can it be to go to Africa and the roots there. I mean, as you were saying, it's the beginning of the rest of humanity, perhaps. So how was for you to visit Africa?
In my first trip to Africa was in 2003. It was a difficult time in my life because at that time I took my son with me to Africa because we were having problems with him. So part of the reason why I took my son to Africa was to get help for my son. At that time, he was into gangs and he was getting into trouble, and we were worried about him losing his life here in Oakland, like so many kids do. And so my first trip to Africa was for deep healing, was for two reasons. One, so that I could become initiated into this tradition, but also to get help for my son. One of the things that me a lot about the elders that I've met in Africa was how humble they were. Although they were powerful people, they were also very humble. They were not people that boasted a lot about what they could do or what they know. It's like they didn't have anything to prove to anyone. They were very easy to talk to. They were from the outside, they looked so ordinary. That was my experience with the elders that I met, with some of the elders that people will meet in the film. It was just how approachable they were. And I think it was a deep contrast to what happens, I think, a lot over here in the West sometimes, where people like to, I'm going to say it, where people sometimes tend to show off. They were very, it was quite the opposite. They were very humble people. They were very, like I said, very, very low-key. They didn't have anything to prove to anyone.
Beautiful. And you were in the corporate world. Is that correct? Your career was in the corporate world? So
yes, for 19 years.
My goodness, how somebody in the corporate world discovers that is not his path and changes life completely. I mean, it has to be really challenging, I would imagine.
It was challenging, and it's interesting that you say that. Sometimes as we go through life, many times we're not always aware of the gifts that we might have, or what happens too is sometimes we become so used to a certain way of living that we forget that there might be other ways of living our life or other ways of existing in the world. And so we just do the same things over and over and over and again. Not being happy, not being fulfilled in any way, not being in touch with our own spirits. That's what people tend to do. So sometimes what happens is that we need a problem, Sometimes what happens is that we have to be like shaken out of this world. Sometimes it doesn't happen naturally. And so many times in our lives, what we need is a crisis, or we need some type of problem to come that will almost force us to do something different with our lives, or else we wouldn't do it. And that's part of how I got out of the corporate world. I started having problems with my boss, with things at work, and then I started to move closer to the work that I do now, even though I already knew that it was something that I would be doing in the future. But it took a problem to break me out of that world. And what I would say to listeners, as you look at the current challenges in your life, or you look at the different problems that you might be facing right now, ask yourself not just ask yourself, well, what is the problem, but ask yourself, well, where is this problem trying to take you to, or where is it leading you to, or who is it leading you to? Because as much as we dislike problems, sometimes the same problems that we don't like, they come into our world to try to heal us in some way, or to try and inspire us to live our lives differently.
Beautiful. So you have discovered your true purpose, and how would you recommend for people that is listening to us today that maybe are trying to find and discover their purpose? What would you recommend for them to do?
Well, a couple of things. One, I would say that I believe that all of the events of your life, as you look at where you are now, and as you look back over your life, in some way, everything that you have done is somehow connected to purpose too. So many times, part of this purpose is like it's closer to us than we realize. And in some cases, we're actually being trained to live this purpose, even though we might not be able to see it at the time. For example, maybe 20 years ago, I used to work for a newspaper as a journalist. Right? And to some people, that would seem so different from what I'm doing now. But in a way, that same work that I used to do, writing for newspapers, helps me today. As I do this work, it helps me to communicate with people in different ways. So all of the skills, for example, Victoria, that you have learned along the way, in some ways, they will help you as you attempt to live your purpose. And the other thing I would say about purpose is that sometimes people think of purpose in a very narrow way. They think that there's only one thing that they could do. And that's not really true, because God is infinite. God doesn't just, when you think of God doesn't just only respond to our prayers, for example. God, helps the sun rise and the moon set. God is behind the rising of the tides. God is the spirit behind everything in the universe. And we are all made in that image of higher energy, whether we call it God or something else. And so when you think about your purpose, what I tell people, it's we are not cogs in a machine that could only do one thing, We can do many things, So even, for example, as you look at the role of, let's say, you're a healer, Victoria, well, that healing can be expressed in so many ways, not just one way. You can express it through dance. You can express it through art, through poetry, through music. And so what I would say to people, think if every single day, if all you do every single day is to ask your ancestors or to ask the spirit world to use you, let's say you don't know what your purpose is, just ask the spirit world to use you. Make that part of your morning prayer. Ask them to use you for your highest good, in the way that's best for you, in the way that's healthy for you. And as long as you trust the inspiration that comes to you after you do that, you'll always be in alignment with your purpose. Why? Because you ask the question. So it's not always something that we have to know directly every single day what we're doing. But if we just ask the question in a humble way to the universe, use me, let it be your will today instead of my own will. Let it be of a higher will. As long as we do what we are asked to do or what we feel called to do, once we ask that question, we will always be in alignment, even though to us it may not look that way. We will always be living a life that's purposeful.
Beautiful. And that reminds me of, I was working in Hollywood and wanting to make music, and I was always thinking in terms of what is trendy and all of that, even though I was rebellious for a long time, but then I kind of accommodated to, okay, what is trendy? But after I started mostly with my shamanic path, I started to do exactly what you said. Ask the universe, what do you want to sing through me? What do you want to express? And I found out that, it always brought me great joy. It was a much more blissful experience than trying to fit what I thought would be successful, So I couldn't agree more than with what you said. And I also agree very much about, not putting ourselves into a box. We are so immense. We are multifaceted. So every time that people ask me or tell me, oh, you're a healer, oh, you are this, you are that, I say, well, I'm Victoria, To put a tag, if I put a tag, I put the tag of my name right now. But we are all eternal beings, so I totally resonate with what you are saying. It really rings true to my heart. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yes. And the other thing I would say is that many times when it comes to the purpose question that people ask, sometimes they have it in their heads that if that's what they're doing, like if they're more in touch with their spirit, then things will be easy for them, or that they have it in their heads that things should always go the way they want it to go. And then if it doesn't go that way, then they think, well, something must be wrong with their purpose or whatever. And that's not true either. It's that many times something could be right for you to do, whether you're called to be a writer, for example, whether you're called to be a poet, whatever it is, whether you're called to be a teacher in a class, whatever it is. Times people have this idea that, well, if they're on the right path, then it will be easy, but that's not necessarily true. A path could be right for you, very right for you, but also comes with a lot of difficulties and challenges that you have to overcome. And so that's why as you listen or you follow the inspiration that comes to you, you must also have the courage to keep going when you feel like stopping. You must keep taking those steps. Those steps are important to keep taking, no matter how many times you feel frustrated, no matter how many times you might feel disappointed, no matter how many times you might feel alone. It's important to keep taking those steps that you are being called to take.
Beautiful. And for those who are joining now, I just want to let you know that we are here with James Weeks. He's the visionary of the upcoming feature-length documentary Across the King's River. He's sharing his journey of wisdom and healing in African spiritual traditions, and we will have a Q&A section, so you can call at 347-308-878. And I see that so far nobody's raising the hand, meaning pressing number 1 to ask a question. So don't be shy. Press number 1 so that we can get to you when we get to the Q&A. But for now, we will continue with the interview. And one thing that I wanted to ask is what are some of the consistent themes in African spirituality?
Well, one of the themes that comes up a lot in African spirituality is the idea that it's the notion that before we come to this world, that, well, first of all, that coming here isn't a mistake, We're not here accidentally. We're here on a mission. But one of the themes is that before we come here to this world, we are clear about what we've come here to do, When we arrive on Earth, we become many times distracted or we forget what we agreed to do, or we become confused, or we may become fearful to live our missions. And so part of the task, the challenge for us in this lifetime is to try to remember. Remember what? Remember the agreements that we made before in the other world, in the lifetime before, we to try and remember. And so that's why sometimes as we go through life, maybe sometimes we might meet someone and they seem so familiar to us. And many times it's because that person was someone that we knew before maybe, or that person was connected to an agreement that we made, And so this journey is really not just about we're here to, yes, of course we have to pay bills, yes. We have to do these things to survive, but it's remembering, rediscovering who we are, and trying to live in a way that has integrity and courage. So those are some of the themes that show up a lot in these traditions, that no, our journey here is not a mistake. We must remember, and sometimes as we go, sometimes we don't remember until later in life. But our goal is to awaken or once we become more awake, to try and stay awake.
So how would you say that we can make sure that we keep that awareness of what we need to do on this more physical life, like paying the bills or taking care of our bodies, things like that, but also balance that with our spiritual practice? Is there any recommendation you would have for this to make sure that we honor all of who we are?
Okay. It's just like we take care of our physical body every single day by eating or by resting, we need to do something for our spirit every day. And so your spiritual practice does not have to look like my spiritual practice. But every day, I'm going to say it simply, anything that you do that uplifts your spirit in some way will help you. Whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's journaling your feelings in a book, anything that you could do on a daily basis that uplifts you in some way will help you to connect spiritually. And it's important to remember that your ancestors, others, or spirit guides are always around you and are always available to you. And so in our tradition, many people have a special altar set up just for their ancestors, which includes maybe photos of those who have passed over on the other side, who are still. Some people make simple offerings, on their ancestral altar, of whether it's water or certain foods that they feel that these spirits might have liked. So it's important to reach out to realize that those who have passed haven't really passed, that they're still alive, they're still available to guide us, And so getting back to your question, it's about paying attention, having a spiritual practice that speaks to us, that touches our hearts, but also paying attention to the signs that we see every day, because there are signs every day that show up. But what have these signs? So we need to become more alert. We need to pay more attention.
Thank you for sharing. And you mentioned about the ancestors, and that is part of also the tradition that I am following with my mentor in shamanism. But perhaps the people listening today are not familiar with this term. If you could explain whether this is related with helping spirits or just our physical lineage, if you could express what ancestors mean.
Ancestors simply mean those loved ones, whether it's a father, whether it's a mother, whether it's a sister, brother who died, who are no longer in the physical form. But it also could mean it's not always people who are connected to you by blood, It could be people or friends even who have passed over, who are guiding you, because we're always being guided. And so what brings our loved ones closer to us? It's the love, really, that they feel for us. It's love. Why? Because love is like an energy that not only heals, love is the energy that binds people together. So if a mother loses a child, or if a child loses its mother, that mother, because of the bond that existed between them, that mother will still be around to guide or to love or to guide, and so many times when people think of those who have passed on the other side, they think that they're over there doing nothing. But no, our lives continue. People on the other world, the ancestors, they're just alive in a different dimension. They're still learning and growing just as we are. They haven't stopped learning. They haven't stopped discovering. And the journey of life never ends. It's continuous, and it's continuous on the other side, too.
That's beautiful, and it really brings tears to my eyes because I can feel my ancestors around me. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's beautiful. So, I wanted to make sure that we cover also the point that perhaps people can still contribute to your film. Can they go to your website, or how would that work?
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, people can make a contribution of any amount, anytime. If they just go to my website, acrossthekingsriver.com, they'll see a donate button, and they could donate anything that comes from their heart. Also, even though like the Kickstarter campaign, even though that's technically over, if they see any of the rewards that we were offering during that campaign that they still want, for their, I would still honor that, even though that campaign is over, and they could just donate whatever, and I would still honor whatever it is that they wish for sure.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. What would be the perspective about oneness and this time of ascension from an IFA perspective?
It's a good question because clearly there's so much division going on right now. There's always been division. There's always been conflict. And from the African worldview, what I would say is that these conflicts, these tensions, these standing, all the frustration, or even all of the hatred that exists in the world, they are opportunities, or they're challenges, hopefully, to help us grow and evolve. It's an opportunity, there are challenges. And so, as difficult as it is, we shouldn't see these things as challenges that keep us divided forever, But the challenges, I think, for each and every one of us to find our own way of bringing healing into the world, our way of somehow bringing some light into, at this time when there's so much darkness, when there's so much depression, there's so much pessimism. You turn on the news media, and there's so much darkness, there's so much problems, there's so much issues. It's easy for us. It's just easy. It doesn't take any effort for any one of us to become depressed by what we see and hear in the media every single day, because a lot of it is dark. A lot of it is depressing. And so that's part of the reason why it's important to have a spiritual practice, so that we can function, so that we can find a way to bring light into the world. And we have to remember that, yes, even though there's darkness, even though there's tension, even there's so many problems that have been unresolved for so long, whether it's racism, whether it's sexism, whether it's ethnic cleansing, whether it's genocide, we have to keep in mind that there are also beautiful things occurring in the world at the same time. There are also, love still exists. Yes, hatred exists, but the opposite is always true. If hatred exists, then love exists too, or else we wouldn't know what hatred is. If ugly exists, well, then beauty exists too. So we must always, if a lie exists, then truth exists too. So we always must keep that in mind, and that's one of the things that Ifa talks about, what we call the duality in all things. If there's hot, then there must be a cold. If there's sickness, there must be healing. So it's never one way. It's never. And so, yes.
Yeah, and that, actually when you're saying that, it brings to my mind the idea of how, when we only want to focus on the good only, how are we going to stay in balance? So what would be the trick to make sure that we enjoy the good, but we don't put away the bad? I don't know if this makes sense. For example, sometimes some people would call themselves light workers. So that means that we are rejecting the shadow. Whereas perhaps if we look at the light and shadow from a perspective of unconditional love, accepting both, that may be a little more empowering and loving. How would you say?
I would say that looking at the shadow, as you put it, or looking at the dark side, or looking at, it's important to do that too, because we need to have a sense of what the challenges are. You need to know, and once you know, guide you, actually it can still guide you to making better choices. You need to know what the reality is or what the situation is, For example, in order to heal someone, for example, let's say, you need to know what the disease is, or you need to know where that disease is located, So that's one way of looking at it. In order to help the community, we need to have a clear understanding of what some of the issues in the community are, and it comes from being brave, and seeing things as they are. We need to also see things as they are, and not how we want them to be, not how we wish them to be, but we need to also be able to see things exactly as they are, so that we know how to proceed, and so that we proceed in the right direction.
Beautiful. I love it. From my perspective, when I, maybe somebody comes to a session with me or something, and they feel that I am going to heal them, my perspective personally is that the only thing I can do is to facilitate a space for them to reconnect with their own power. I feel that we are also powerful, and we have forgotten in some way. Would you feel that that is also the idea in your tradition, or would it be a little different?
Because, every one of us, we all must play a role in our own healing. There's no one that could do all of it for us, because that's not how it works. Someone can help us or open the door for us spiritually by doing certain things, but we must play an active role in how we want our lives to unfold, in the dreams that we have. We must be, as some people like to call it, co-creators in the life that we wish. We can't, just go to someone expecting them to do all the work and we do nothing ourselves. We must constantly and diligently every day take some type of step, to move our life forward. Just take one step a day. You don't have to take all the steps in a day, but you need to take a step every day.
Yes, and from your perspective, what makes somebody be a facilitator for this healing? What is it something that somebody can become, or is just chosen by spirit?
Both. I would say both. I would say it's often chosen that way. But I believe, though, even having said that, I believe that maybe some people are more maybe called or predisposed or whatever. I believe that every one of us, we all have a contribution to make. I think personally, I think it's a mistake for us to think, well, only some people can lead, or only some people can heal, or only some people can nurture. It's true that some people might be maybe gifted, maybe more gifted, but every one of us, we all have a contribution to make. I think part of the problem is that in some ways we have become so dependent on other people, and I think the media does it all the time. It makes us focus on what our elected leaders are doing, or what President Obama is doing or not doing, or what this leader is doing or not doing. And we forget our own power. We forget that we too have a role to play in our own family, in our own community, in our own, whether it's a church, whether it's a synagogue, whether it's an Ifa temple. We forget that each and every one of us, we have a role to play too. And so we need to take back some of this power and some of this responsibility and stop putting it off on other people, in my opinion.
Beautiful. I agree. I agree. We need more self-empowerment. So something that, I always like to cover in this show is about extraterrestrial life. And for what I heard, in Africa, this is something that everybody knows, that there are extraterrestrials and that we accept that. But here in the U.S. or even in Europe or anywhere in the world, it's sometimes not so easy to accept those things. What is your experience regarding extraterrestrial life in your life personally and in your experience in Africa? Did you have any experiences? Did you hear any stories?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Oh, I'm asking about extraterrestrial life, like ETs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say, we don't call them, we don't refer to other life entities as extraterrestrial. We just refer to them as other beings in other dimensions, or other spirits in other dimensions. But like I said, we never start from the belief that, we must be the only ones. And so our worldview has always been that these other forms exist in some capacity, and we just maybe need to become more aware, but we've never seen it that way. We've never seen these other beings or these other spirits as something that we have to prove, It's like in some, like in Europe, for example, mediums, for example, especially in like maybe the European American, some of them, they come from the viewpoint, they have to prove that life continues, and so that's why they do mediumship work, to prove that life continues. Well, in our worldview in Africa, we know that life continues, so we don't feel like that's something that's debatable. It's not an argument. It's not something that we have to prove to other people. They accept it or they don't accept it. If they accept it, great. They don't accept it, great. But there's nothing to prove,
I see. So is there people in Africa that sometimes desires to connect with their ancestors through somebody in the Ifa tradition, somebody facilitating, or do they have also the very close connection personally with their ancestors and communicate with them?
I would say it's more the second of what you said, that it's more encouraged to build that relationship with the ancestors yourself.
Wow.
And what I would say is that your ancestors, because of their love with you, they're likely to have a closer connection with you anyway, because they know you, because of that love connection, And so it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about empowerment. We need to understand that as we pray, or that as we go about our day-to-day life, that those that love us are around us, and that they do, in fact, hear what we are saying, and they do, in fact, know what we need. for our growth, for our development, our families. And we are to trust that they are listening because they are. We are to trust that they are around because they are, you know. And we are to trust that they will guide us in the right way, because they will if we allow them to guide us. And the other side to that is understanding that our ancestors, those who love us, or even those who are guiding us in spirit, they want us to live our best lives. They're not there to judge us, you know. They're not there to point fingers at us for our mistakes or for our humanness, you know. They're not there for that. Why? Because they live their lives too, you know. And the mistakes that we made are our mistakes, you know. And as people who are having an experience on Earth, why wouldn't we make mistakes? We're here to learn and to grow. So that they're not there to judge us. They're there to support us, to guide us. But they want us to live our lives on our terms. They want us to be ourselves, not them.
Beautiful.
If they wanted us to be them, if we were meant to be them, we would have been them, but we're not. We're ourselves, you know?
Right. And in part, we are them in a sense, meaning that we have brought all their lineage also. And I feel a big part of the work that we do when we are in a shamanic path or healing path is to really heal our lineages. It's one of the focus of my mentor, Gretchen. And I feel, you know, that we are part of them, for sure. So it would make sense that they really have our best interest at heart, as you well mentioned. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
So today we don't have anyone raising the hand to ask a question. So maybe it's a shy audience. Maybe you explain everything so they don't have a question. So to complete the show, I would love for you to share something in Yoruba. I know that you are fluent in Yoruba, and I don't think I ever heard that language, even though it's, you know, my dad's language. Maybe when I was 1 year old, I heard it. So I would love for you to just say something short, like a closing blessing, and then translate it to us, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Ishoba kushemaje obaronishe odobaku. Ishoba kushemaje koshenko. What I just said was a proverb. It's what I call the King's River proverb. You know, I might share that proverb on other shows, but basically what that proverb says is that if a king sends you on a mission, you can't tell the king no. In Yoruba language, an Oba is a king. So when we say Ishe Oba Koshemaje Obaronishe, it's a way of saying that if a king sends you, give you a task to do, you know, you can't say no. And then the proverb says, but the king has already told you what to do, you know. And then the proverb goes on to say, but, you know, there's a lot of the river is deep. It's a way of saying that as if a king sends you on something, it's like a king is asking you to cross the river somehow. And so the implication is that it could be dangerous, but you still have to do it. That's the proverb that inspires this film. And it's a way of saying to the listeners is that, hey, you have been asked to do something. We all have been asked to do something. We all have, in our hearts, if we listen carefully, there's something that we all have been asked to do, whether it's create some art, whether it's, who knows, so whether it's forgive someone, whether it's heal someone, whether it's to be more courageous, whether it's to be more bold, whether it's to be a leader. We, each and every one of us, have been asked to do something that in some ways will help to empower the earth or to empower someone else. And we should be serious about doing that.
Very powerful and very true. I feel on a mission, and sometimes it's not easy, but it's so worth it. So thank you so much, James, for sharing that. Thank you for being here with us today. And once again, for those who want to visit James Wick's website, just go to acrossthekingsriver.com. Did I say it right?
Yes, acrossthekingserver.com. That's correct.
Beautiful. So thank you once again. It's a pleasure to connect with you. And, closing the show, I want to just let everyone know that next week on Saturday, December 13th, we will have here somebody that already been here. Is Rob Gauthier, but this time he will be channeling Aridis, the wise ancient Pleiadian being from the Neb. So there will be also a Q&A section at the end of the show. So get ready for that, and don't be shy. Make sure to connect. Even if it is to say hi, it's always beautiful to talk with you. And all the archives of my shows are both in video and audio at victoriavives.com/radio. And there you can also see everything that is coming up in my radio show. And if you are near Los Angeles, I would love for you to come to any of my gatherings and certification classes for healing. Tonight, actually, I have a class on Akashic Records, so that you learn how to read the Akashic Records. And tomorrow, I have the last Reiki Level 1 certification class of the year. We also have a winter solstice event next weekend with amazing daytime classes and a free potluck celebration. And for all of this, just go to ReikiWellbeing.org to see the calendar of events. And if you are not here in this area in Los Angeles, you can check out crystalhealer.org to receive Crystal Healer certification from the comfort of your own home. So crystalhealer.org. And, once again, a big pleasure to be with James and with each of you, and looking forward to more connections. Check out my Facebook because I love to connect with new friends there. And I will let you now with the announcements for the Enlightenment Evolution Network. We have many, many shows in this network. So I let you with that now, and I send you a big hug. Mwah.
Hi, this is Karen Newman from the show About Oneness, and here's what's coming up on the week starting on Monday, December the 8th until Sunday, December the 14th on the Enlightenment Evolution Network 1 and 2. Simply put, Rob Gauthier, founder of the EEN and the host of the show that started it all, the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, has put together the greatest metaphysical radio network ever. 7 days a week, we have shows that will aid you on your path to enlightenment, evolution, and ascension. On EEN 1, Monday night, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is Heart to Heart Talk Radio with your host, Daniel Scranton. Join Daniel and his featured guests discussing a wide variety of metaphysical topics. Daniel channels the creators, the Hathors, Ophelia the Fairy, Archangel Michael, and the latest, the Unicorn Collective. Daniel and his guests will take phone calls and questions, and it's sure to generate high-frequency discussions. You can find more information about Daniel at his website, danielscranton.com, and also on Facebook. Go to the Events tab on Daniel's website to learn more about Daniel's upcoming events. Daniel's guest on Monday, December the 8th, is Misty Shilva Jenian. She is a life coach. She has a life coach certification program that she created, and she teaches you how to access your intuition. She will be talking with Daniel about her work, her spiritual journey, and the current state of the shift. She will be online live taking questions. On Tuesdays at noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, please join hosts Megan Krandelmeyer and Rachel Archelaus for Radio Inspiration, Expression, and Abundance for their show Soulfulpreneur. Spiritual business specialists Rachel and Megan will bring you inspiring conversations with people who are living their soul purpose. Frequent guests include psychic mediums, channelers, coaches, artists, and authors. They end every show with psychic readings and business coaching. Your questions about your spiritual business or life purpose journey are welcome. Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, is the show that started it all, the Enlightenment Evolution Hour with host Rob Gauthier. Rob channels Treb on the first Wednesday of each month and will take callers' questions. On the third Wednesday, he will have special guests such as guest channelers and other metaphysical teachers. The other 2 Wednesdays are freestyle call-in shows to discuss whatever callers have on their mind. Tune in to Rob on Wednesday nights, and you can also find him on TrebChanneling.com and on Facebook at the Enlightenment Evolution Network group page. Rob Gautier's upcoming events are: on January 3rd, 2015 is an online interactive event called the Advanced Density Masterclass 2.0, where Rob will channel Aradif, the ancient Pleiadian, for the most profound information about densities, dimensions, and all things of the universe. This is a live, online, interactive event that will be accessible from all devices, PC, and Macs around the world. On April the 3rd, 2015, you can spend 3 days with Treb and Aradif in Asheville, North Carolina during the lunar eclipse, learning to channel. Only 30 spots available. Please go to TrebChanneling.com to sign up and for details. Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, join host Philip Malika with the Consciousness Evolution Hour. Join Philip and his special guests and co-hosts as they discuss the shift, ascension, timelines, metaphysical concepts, and the fifth dimension. Find Philip at the Consciousness Evolution 2.0 group page on Facebook and on YouTube. Fridays, The Earth Experience with Kalina Angel, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. The Earth Experience explores our soul's expansion through our human experiences on Earth. Kalina will help you to navigate and expand through the exciting confusions we are manifesting as new 5D beings. On Saturdays, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Victoria Vives hosts Earth Sky People Radio, Awakening to an Intergalactic Society, bringing you to greater awareness regarding star seeds and extraterrestrial life, living in harmony with one another and Mother Earth and with life beyond Earth, the Interstellar Alliance, or Planet Earth becoming part of an intergalactic society. The transformative power of music, frequency, and sound, shamanism, ancestral wisdom, and star nations, self-sustained and regenerative living, and much, much more. Victoria's guest on December 13th will be Rob Gautier, channeling Aradif, the wise ancient Pleiadian being from Deneb. There will be a Q&A section at the end. On Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Pacific, is my show About Oneness. About Oneness is a weekly radio program focused on celebrating the ongoing conscious awakening of our planet and a realization of oneness. My guest on December the 14th is Crystal van den Akker from the Netherlands. She will be online live, and we will be discussing the upcoming energies of 2015. If you would like to learn more about me and my show, you can go to aboutoneness.com, where there will be many videos of channelings and teaching, as well as my upcoming guests. On the EEN Network 2. On Saturday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, the Pied Piper and Texas Rebel hosting Disclosure Now. Disclosure Now is the On the Edge of Our Seat show that covers all topics of disclosure, from the world's most famous and obscure UFO cases to cryptozoology, conspiracies, and all things that go bump in the night. Pied Piper started his journey in Michigan in 1993 as a preteen seeing Bigfoot and never could get enough of investigating all things paranormal. Texas Rebel is a wild Texas man who loves the same journey and has studied these same things for years. Join them as they cover all things in the human experience that can just not be answered by anyone. And coming soon to the Enlightenment Evolution Network will be The Resonance Intention, hosted by Neil and Sol Gar. The show will be on Sundays, starting at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. The Resonance Intention is a show dedicated to all things frequency and vibration. They will showcase conscious musicians who infuse frequencies into their music and have set out to uplift and raise the vibration of humanity through their music. They will have in-depth discussions with various artists about their passion, purpose, and personal journey that led them to where they are now. Additionally, they will routinely have guests on the topics of free energy, technology, and other quantum modalities, technologies that are coming into existence now. The Resonance Intention is a platform for artists, musicians, and inventors to increase their awareness of their personal approach in order to contribute to the paradigm shift that we are currently within. And remember, you never have to miss any show on the Enlightenment Evolution Network 1 or 2. All shows are available to listen to again on Blog Talk Radio immediately after they air on playback, or you can go to the Enlightenment Evolution Network YouTube page and listen to any of the shows from the network. All right, back to the show.